We all know group projects are terrible, but this one is actually going to be graded individually.
You're Locked On Flames, your daily podcast on the Calgary Flames. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome to today's episode of Locked On Flames. As always, I'm your host, Jess Belmosto, joined by my partner in crime, Nick Zararis, on this fantastic late April Thursday evening. Hope you're all having a great day, and thank you so much for making Locked On Flames your first listen of the day. We're here for you every day, and make sure you're subscribed to us on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. It's time for us to, be critical of this team. And the report cards are coming out.
We've done a lot of the kind of the philosophical, the ideological, the stuff you can't really measure, the stuff that the driving force for why the team kind of underperformed this year, all the stuff that has to do with personalities and the people aspect of the game. That stuff, it's hard to measure because you don't really know how much this much confidence means in terms of production versus this versus that. So we've done a lot of conversation, a lot of talking over the last few weeks since the regular season ended. It's only been a week and a half and it feels like it's been a month, but we've done a lot of conversation about the kind of why they played the way they played. But we still have yet to really kind of dive into how they played at the season long level, which is the first part of what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, and I think last night's Bruins and Panthers game, I just saw so much of the Flames in the Bruins performance. I was like, I can't watch this. I'm going to be sick to my stomach. This is like water torture, like I'm a war criminal or something, and it's just getting worse and worse. Now it's the playoffs, and I don't want to deal with that. I watched 82 games of it. Don't need it now.
Yeah, no. The way the Flames played this year, you can sum it up. Close, but no cigar. And that only works in what's horseshoes and hand grenades. That's the cliche the old people say. Close only works in those games, and hockey is not one of those games. So it's great that they played pretty well, and they've got pretty good underlying numbers, which we're going to talk about in the second segment of the show. But just on the macro level, I mean, they're a league average team. I did a bunch of math. Well, Google Sheets did a bunch of math. I didn't do a bunch of math. So the league average team scored 260 goals this year. The Flames scored 260 exactly. Goals against, the league average was 260. The Flames 252 goals against. So decent. Those are respectable average, league average statistics, what you would expect. The way I broke up, the way I did a lot of this is league average versus playoff average, because you don't want to just be league average, because league average gets you just in the playoffs. You're in like the jet spot where you're going to be down 3-1 to a good team. Playoff average for goals for 278. And then goals against 231. So that definitely a bit of a gap there between the Flames on both offense and defense compared to the playoff average, which of course, you're only picking the top 16 teams. The statistics are going to be better, but that's the bar. You're trying to win a Stanley Cup. That was the expectation, that this team was going to be a bona fide contender this year. And that tells you're about 20 goals away, both offensively and defensively. And that's nothing to sneeze at. That's one goal every fourth game. That's one goal, a quarter of a goal every game, or one goal every fourth game, however you want to break that down for yourself.
Yeah, and how many, 28, 29 one-goal games?
Yeah.
It doesn't take a genius to figure that math out. The Flames just couldn't help themselves.
No.
No matter how hard they tried. And there were nights where the effort, it was a concerted effort, I would say. And then there were other nights it was like they didn't want to be there, and
very inconsistent. Inconsistent.
And it was hard to watch. And I'm sure it was hard to play through. It's not being average, especially.
No, it's not.
Especially if you were on the team last year, where you were at a seriously more competitive level, and Gaudreau just won the Stanley Cup. And, Huberdeau and Uyghur had just come from the Panthers, who also made the playoffs. So had a good chunk of this team that has playoff experience and has these expectations. It's not like it's in Arizona or, like the Flyers or something where
Yeah.
it's just, what you're getting into. It just feels like a 180 from where the expectations were.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And then you start peeling it down because the way I approach this is generally trying to figure out what are the good teams doing. That's typically the starting point for evaluating what doesn't work for a team. So you would think the majority of hockey's played at 5-on-5. About 75-80% of all ice time is 5-on-5. 5-on-5, the Flames are above average. They're above playoff average in terms of scoring goals. The Flames, 182 goals at 5-on-5. The league average this year was 168. The playoff average, 180. So the Flames scored enough at 5-on-5 goals-wise to be a playoff team. Defensively, though, 169 goals conceded. The league average, 168. So one more than league average. And then the playoff average is 149. So again, about a 20-goal differential there on defense versus what you would expect from a playoff team on defense as well as offense.
Yeah. And, just it really isn't just about scoring all those goals.
No.
And you just look at how many silly mistakes there were through the defense and
Oh,
how
yeah.
it just some of the stuff just didn't feel like it just felt like a blooper. Like it definitely wasn't supposed to happen. Like
Oh,
all
yeah.
the Chris Tanev deflections and how you knew if he was in front of the net, it was just not going to end well. And Rasmus Anderson even he had some not so great turnovers, and Noah Hannafin struggled, and Zadorov he wasn't on the ice because he was in the penalty box. So it's just it is a team effort here. It doesn't just fall on one player's shoulders.
It doesn't, especially when you're talking about macro season long stuff. If you're talking about, a handful of goals, yeah, you can maybe pin it on one or two guys. But as far as the defense, and the other point you missed is just that month and a half stretch where Markstrom was just letting in the first shot he faced every single night. That's the other part of this. And we'll talk about the goaltending because that's really one of the biggest gaps, and that'll be in the second segment. But the last thing I want to get in here before we move on to the next segment, power play. 50 power play goals this year. League average is 54. Playoff team average 58. So you're not terribly off, but that's 8 power play goals. If you get 230, 240 power plays for the entire season, we're talking about converting one more every 2-3 weeks. That's not a significant amount of more goals, but you do need to be having a better power play. And then as far as the kill, the Flames conceded 47 goals on the penalty kill. The league average 54. Playoff average 48. So the penalty kill relatively fine, even though percentage wise it wasn't as good as it had been in previous years.
I didn't really have any issues with the penalty kill. I mean, granted, I'm going off of strictly memory recall, and it was a long season, but I don't think there was ever a point where I was like, we can just let this happen and unravel at even strength. It's fine. They can just decline the penalty. We do have to talk about goaltending, and we're going to do that coming up next. But before we do that, I do want to take a quick break to talk to you about Built Bar. If you're looking for a delicious snack but don't want all the sugar and calories, especially if you're going to the gym and you just need that extra oomph and gas in your tank, Built Bars are the perfect snack for you. I'm a snacker. Nick, do you eat snacks during the hockey games?
That's one of the anxiety things. I got to be doing something with my hands. I can't just be sitting there like this. That doesn't work for me. So snacking typically works.
Bag of pretzels.
Yes.
And Built Bars are fantastic for when you're sitting there and just instead of biting your nails, bite a Built Bar because they are covered in 100% real chocolate and only have about 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, and 17 grams of protein, which is almost an entire serving size of protein. So if you don't want to wait to get a box and you are in America, you can head on down to your local Walmart or Sam's Club and get your specialty flavors at builtbar.com as well. But you can, like I said, head to Walmart today and they're in the pharmacy section. and grab yourself a box of Built Bars, and you can pick up a 4-bar box of cookies and creams, double chocolate, and or a coconut puff. If you're close to Sam's Club, you can run in and grab a 13-bar box with their hit flavors of brownie batter puff and churro puff. And you guys can just thank me later. And thank you, everyone, for hanging out with us on Locked On Flames. We're very excited to have you here. Make sure you are subscribed and following us wherever you get your podcasts. But Linus Ullmark leaving his crease last night, again, just more flashbacks to the 82-game season. Didn't need to see it.
It's one of those things. It's a breakdown. It happens. Those types of plays happen. It's a communication breakdown. He panics when he realizes he's about to get pressured. He realizes he's got to get back in the net. He just whiffs on the pass, and you get pressured, and you get an ugly shot, and then the rebound trickles back out. I mean, it sucks, but, that's how it happens sometimes. It's not always, you don't always get outplayed. Sometimes you do beat yourself.
Yeah, and the one picture that just sticks out in my brain for the Flames this year is Jacob Markstrom like halfway to the neutral zone. And I don't know what he was doing besides, like, did he think he was at like a birthday party and there's like a slip and slide? Did he forget where he was? But it was a less than stellar performance from Markstrom. And I believe it was even below his career average.
Yeah. That was his worst season since his rookie season, statistically. That was his worst season since his rookie season when he was with the Panthers, and that was like 11 or 12 years ago.
Yeah, so think of where we all were 11 or 12 years ago, and that's the Jacob Markstrom you're getting. But, I do think a lot of things were out of his control. I don't think this was some sort of just him not being a good goalie. I think a lot of it had to do with the state of the team, the stuff he was dealing with. Like, I'm sorry, if I know my coworkers are dealing with some nonsense, my mood's off. I don't want to hear it. I don't care, especially if you're in a high stakes position like a goaltender.
Oh, it was weighing on him all year. It was in his head that, I got to make the save. I got to make the save. And then you get beat and you're deflated. It happens. I mean, at 5-on-5, the Flames save percentage is 90.33. The league average is 91.44. So, we're talking about 0.08%. We're talking about like one extra save, two extra saves every other game, something along those lines for the course of an entire season. But those are the two telltale stats. In the second segment here, I have it broken down into the underlying numbers. The only two things the Flames were below league average at: shooting and save percentage at 5-on-5. And that tells you two things. Number one, they didn't get any goaltending luck. Number two, they didn't have any shooting luck, and they didn't have enough shooting talent. That's another thing that I looked on HockeyViz. HockeyViz has a very handy visual where it breaks down guys who either shoot more or pass more. And the only person who shoots from a high danger area consistently that played more than like 10 or 11 minutes a game, because like Walker Dewar was up there, Rona was up there, guys who had cups of coffee over the course of the season. Only person who was up there for the Flames was Tyler Toffoli.
That would have been my guess had you not even like laid any of that out. I just, and you need more than just Tyler Toffoli. That is something, again, that we have harped on all season. There wasn't enough shooting and there wasn't enough finishing. This was not great. And you're not going to win games if your goalie can't stop a puck and you can't score a goal.
No,
it's that simple.
No, it's very similar to what happens to the Hurricanes every year in the playoffs, because the Flames and Hurricanes play a similar style that's based on volume, forechecking, and really outworking the other team. The Flames, the Hurricanes, they will always have good underlying numbers because they have a ton of scoring chances. They accumulate a bulk amount of chances. Not a lot of them are particularly dangerous. The area where the Hurricanes really outdo the Flames is the rebounds and the second chance opportunities. Flames didn't do a lot of that this year, and the Hurricanes did. That's really your difference, because if you have 40, 50 scoring chances, and it comes to like 3.5, 3.6 expected goals, you divide it out, you're looking at pretty mediocre, bad scoring chances. When you look at the Flames heat map, where a majority of their scoring chances come from, we're talking about point shots, top of the circle, very rarely getting between the hashes, getting around the net mouth, the most quality areas. And granted, the best players in the world are in those areas, and it's hard to get to those areas. That's what makes those guys, the Matthew Tkachuks, the Chris Kreiders, the Brad Marchands, the elite of the elite guys who can get to the net front with whether it be their size, their speed. That's what makes those guys special. There's only so many of them to go around in the entire league. I understand that. But when the entire team approach is predicated on volume, then you need to make the secondary opportunities off of that a real emphasis. You need deflections. You need rebounds. You need the ugly stuff around the net mouth. And the Flames are going to have good underlying numbers as long as Daryl's the coach, because this is how it's always been. The Flames are the Flames, I want to say, were the only team in the top like 17, 18 teams on natural stature that didn't make the playoffs with the majority of these statistics. Because when you look at them under the hood, everything looks good until you get to the shooting and the save percentage. And those are your two swing statistics right there. Those are your luck statistics. You didn't get any luck, and you didn't do anything to help yourself. Everybody, luck is what happens when skill meets opportunity. Well, if you don't have any shooting talent, there's only so much you can do.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's, the recipe for success is seemingly right there. It's just a matter of them actually having a general manager or an authority figure bring in some extra talent to help them, actually make the playoffs. And I think that what's so frustrating to watch is that, you're watching these playoff games and you're just like, this is either so reminiscent of when the Flames of last, I guess technically now like 2 seasons ago, when they were in the playoffs, and you're just like, why couldn't this stay this way? Or you're watching it and you're like, this is horrible. This game's going to be the way that it is, and this team's going to lose because they're playing like the Flames. And it's so easy, at least when I'm watching it, to pick out like, oh, this guy would be great on the Flames. He brings something that they're lacking. And
well, I'll hold off on, what the summer is going to look like, because you can't really answer that until you know who the coach is going to be, because everything I just said about all the underlying numbers and the style of play could be entirely different next year if there's a different coach. So just one last point on this, for the most part, when you look at the Flames, they are settling for those less than stellar scoring chances. They don't get to the net particularly well. Everybody, the searing images of them always having the empty net, 6-on-5, chasing that last goal, nobody getting a shot off within 15 feet of the net mouth because there was no one to either get there or there wasn't any space to get there. And it's frustrating when you can't score, because you can have great goaltending and still not win. You look at some of the things that are going on in the playoffs right now, where you can have amazing goaltending and great defense, but if you don't score enough, you're not going to win. It's why building a defense first team in today's NHL does not make sense, because scoring is going to continue to go up until there's some kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Not regression. Correction, but until there's some kind of correction, whether it be they change the rules, whether it be the goaltending techniques get better, the goaltending equipment gets better, the rules change, whatever. Goal scoring is up. That's why the average save percentage is down. That's why the average shooting percentage is up. There are more goals this year than any year since, I want to say, the early 90s, I want to say, if I remember correctly. I could be wrong about that. I've read that article a few weeks ago. That was still in the regular season. That might have changed, but goal scoring is up. So you need more offense. Trying to build from the back end, if those guys aren't contributing offensively, not a great endeavor. You're not going to have as much success as you would. There are exceptions to that. You can do things like the Bruins have, where they've got 4 or 5 really good defensemen who are pretty good at driving play offensively as well. You look at the Avalanche when they're fully healthy with Makar and Taves, 2 of the best puck movers in the entire league. So there are ways to do it, but you definitely want to focus on forward talent, because that's the most important thing.
Absolutely. And coming up next, we're just going to wrap up these evaluations, the broader evaluations, because there's still so much to dive into and talk about. And like we've said since game 82, we're going to keep you entertained. But before we dive into the final segment of the show, I do want to tell you about eBay Motors. For a championship team, it's all about making sure every player is a perfect fit. It's the same when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit just right. So the next time you need parts and accessories, head to eBay Motors. With the eBay Guaranteed Fit, you can be sure every part you need fits just right. And the first time around, too. So you're not going to have to be playing the return and get this next one, exchanging a million times over. And with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. So, it's easy. It's very easy. If you got a convertible, you're bringing it out. It's nice weather. Head to eBay Motors. They'll have what you need to freshen it up, to spruce it up a little bit. And right now, you can get the right parts, the right fit, at the right price on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available for U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. And thank you, everyone, for hanging out with us on today's episode of Locked On Flames. Make sure you're sticking around. It's going to be a long summer, and we're here for you. Is Oliver Shillington back?
He was
skating today.
He was skating today. That is encouraging. It'd be nice if Oliver Shillington was back in the fold for this team going forward. He's a good defenseman. They need good defensemen.
Yeah. I mean, you have Rasmus Anderson, who, again, just a delightful defenseman.
And he was dealing with the nagging injury all second half after he got in that accident. He said he's been in discomfort since it happened, hasn't been 100% since. Yeah. So, a lot of these guys dealing with things. I know Gaudreau said he broke something like last year during the playoff run with the Avalanche and just said, I'll play through it. I'm fine. And had a good first half, made the All-Star team, and then would really struggle, only 5 goals in the last 34 games post All-Star break. So these guys need the long offseason. Nagging injuries accumulate. Guys go on long playoff runs. They don't really get things taken care of till they miss a playoff. You think about Tyler Seguin getting his hip replaced, his hip fixed like 2 years after he first injured it. So it takes a while, and these guys got to learn to adapt to their new body. Like Tyler Seguin's playing great now, but it's been 2 years since post-op. So it's going to be a while for guys who are dealing with nagging injuries to feel like themselves or to adapt to the way their body feels presently.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, is like, not only are you watching them play injured, like Andrew Mangiapane quietly had shoulder surgery earlier this week. They have to heal.
Yeah.
It isn't like, I don't know.
You can never bank on anything. That's what I always tell everybody. I was talking about somebody about Aaron Rodgers yesterday, because he was dealing with a thumb injury all last year. And he goes, well, he should be fine. He was pretty good last year with the bad thumb. And I go, it's never guaranteed. You don't know until they play, especially somebody changing teams. You do not know how it's going to go. Look at what happened with Russell Wilson with the Broncos.
Yeah.
You do not know until somebody gets in that situation. We all should know at this point, based on what happened with Huberdeau, with Weegar, where you can be a really good player, but your environment matters. If you're set up for success or not, are you optimized to play the way you're going to? The NFL draft is in like 2.5 hours. All those kids got talent. It's a matter of if they land in the right place that's going to nurture that talent and bring it along to be impactful. It's one of the things that people really overlook, because you just assume talent's always going to win. Yeah, talent gets you in the door. Unless you have something to get refined and brought out of you, that talent can only do so much. You need refinement. No matter how good you are at the college level, you are going to need time. The same thing with hockey. No matter how good you are at the junior level, you are going to need development. You are going to have to learn how to play the way your team wants you to play, not what got you that far.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. Like, some of these kids are coming in 18, 19, 20 years old, and they are peanuts. You look at Matthew Coronado, and he is a child. He is so skinny and so small, but he plays well. But these players need to beef up and bulk up.
Oh yeah, they'll get them on the NHL. They'll get them on the NHL nutrition. They'll have the full off season where they'll have the nutrition. They'll have the workout routine. Like, I remember, I forget, it was years ago now. I was listening to an interview with Charlie McAvoy, and he's like, "Yeah, when I got to the Bruins, they were like, what do you eat? And I go, I usually just make food for myself. They're like, what do you eat? Oh, mac and cheese, sandwiches. And they go, okay, we're going to give you 3 meals every day when you come to practice. So in the morning, he'd get breakfast before morning skate. After morning skate, he would get lunch, and he'd get a pregame meal. And if he wanted something after the game, the Bruins would feed him after the game too. These kids are used to being in college, where for the most part, they're on dining hall food, or whatever they can make for themselves. Everybody who's went to college, unless you are actually good in the kitchen, cereal is the most common thing you are going to be eating in college. That is not what a professional athlete needs.
No professional athlete is going to sit down in an interview and say, Easy Mac.
Shout out Cale Makar saying the first thing he bought after his contract was a Slurpee from 7-Eleven. That was so funny.
That's
so
fantastic.
Funny.
Like, most people, like, I know kids that got drafted to MLB teams and whatnot, and they bought like an $80,000 Audi with like their signing bonus, and now they work in a corporate office. So shout out to Cale Makar for being
living
reasonable.
Living the dream. Yeah, no, I don't need a ton of money, just enough to buy silly little treats. Let me pay for my iced coffee and not feel bad about it.
Right, exactly. Let me just get like my $7 like nice latte and just call it a day. And
exactly.
So I can have enough energy to get through the off season, to power us through the summer that's ahead. I know we don't want to speculate too much about the summer, but I did read something last night that basically said players don't want to come back.
Yeah, no, in Eric Francis's article, he said several, which could be anything from 3 to, the whole team. But until you don't know. But there are a handful of guys who were even like during the season, like, hey, it's not going great. So you don't know until you know. That's always the way I'm going to err with this kind of thing. If we hear something, we'll obviously talk about it. But until then, we got to actually talk about actual hockey at some point. Otherwise, we'll go insane.
Yeah, no, otherwise it's just going to be us rocking back and forth and just going crazy. But the evaluations will continue because we have some individuals to give report cards to and all that fun stuff. But thank you, everyone, for hanging out with us on today's episode of Locked On Flames. You can follow us on Twitter at Jess Belmosto and at Nick Zararis. Subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube as well. It is free, and I will be back tomorrow for some more forward evaluations. And until then, enjoy the draft and playoff hockey.